always find a use for stuff. And today we're going to take all this old chain that I've had just sitting around, and we're going to use it to increase our security. Throughout history, whenever possible, men have chosen their home sites, whether it be a castle or a farm or a ranch or a western fort. They've chosen their home sites with an eye to security, a place that's defensible. And we don't really do that these days, not here in this country, in America. Many of us live in neighborhoods. Many of us, even though we live in the country, we choose it for beauty and cost, availability. Now, I live in a gorgeous place, and I bless my daddy for that. He slowly bought up this land, probably in 5 parcels, 6 parcels, over time. Bought other people out to get the 3 acres I've got here on the water. And I love it here. But I realize that this bayou that I live on presents a security problem in any kind of SHTF situation. Not only do I have to use the land and the obstacles of the woods and the swamp, I've got to use this waterway as a portion of my security plan. And I've got to take into account the fact that this bayou is a road. And it's a way for someone to access my castle. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at building waterway barriers, or log jams, or log booms, or whatever it is you call it, so that we could stop a boat that wanted to come up this bayou if we had to. I thought a lot about how I would block boats if it ever came to that, where I felt like I needed to secure the bayou from strangers coming up. And what I've hit on is a log boom or a log jam. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with it, imagine pieces of log, you cut down a tree, I don't know, say 8-inch, 10-inch diameter, connected by chain. And these are floated in the bayou. So you got a waterway, and you've got logs floating, connected by chain across this waterway, and they're big enough that they would deter whatever size boat you think might be able to come up there. I think that they used a large version of this on the Hudson during the Revolutionary War to just keep the British from coming farther up the Hudson River to attack West Point. I'm not sure it worked. They did something like that. Now here in this bayou, I'm thinking that 8 or 10-inch logs would work. And my plan is to go ahead and get the chain cut and have it, set aside with whatever hardware I think I'm going to need, in this case large U-nails, to build this thing. And then worry about the logs when we come to that. I mean, if God forbid we ever get to a place where I feel like I need to block off that bayou, I would go cut down a tree or telephone poles for that matter, because what good would they do in that kind of situation where I am so concerned about my safety that I have to do that? Most likely we're talking about a serious end of life as we know it, and telephone poles are probably no longer of much use as intended. So whatever I use, whether I cut down a tree out in the bayou, or God forbid, even one here on my property, or a telephone pole. I'm thinking 8, 10-inch diameter, and then probably 4 feet, 3 feet to 4 feet long poles or logs, and then connecting them with links of chain. Where I want to be able to employ this log boom would be far enough away from my property that I have time to respond should a boat come. Let's say, let's grab a piece of paper here.
Oh. Winding.
Okay. Let's say my property ends here. And this is a pretty good idea of what it looks like coming in from the bay. I would want to employ my log jam so that I have enough distance. Let's say I'm defending from here, that when the boat comes around, I slow and stop its progress, and I can take that craft under fire, or at least make them realize that I have them under my gun. So at those places, the bayou's about 20 to 23 feet wide. So I'm going to, if I have enough chain here, I'm going to make enough chain that I can employ 2 of these at that location. And then, of course, I've got to worry about upstream. And once again, there's a turn right up there where I would employ it. And once again, I would want to employ it so that here on my dock, I could take them under fire. So what I've got to do basically is I've got to cut all this chain up with the angle grinder, and I don't know, pieces of say 2 feet long, and I'm going to pair them up. And that's pretty much all I can really do right now. I can do this, cut it all up, get all the hardware together, put it in a bucket. And that's the end of the prep, because I can't go, or it makes no sense to go building an actual log jam or waterway barrier now and have it sitting out there rotting.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this is just a little exercise, taking you through the prep that I'm doing. Going to use up all this chain I've had just sitting around, just rusting away. Although, ugly as it is, it's still pretty strong. Alright then, that didn't take long, and I have 15 sets of chain, which by my calculations I would be able to possibly make 3 different lengths of barrier or log jam across the bayou. And I also have these pieces from an old swing set, and I held on to them in their regular lengths because I've got to have something to tie to the shore. Now, about how to do that. There are a couple places where there's posts, and I could of course put posts in, but I'm guessing that most likely what I would do, if we got to this situation where I felt like I needed to get ready to deploy these barriers, what I would do is take one of the boats over, dig into the mud there on the other shore, on either shore, and bury cement blocks with chain attached to them. Cover them back over, and I tell you what, you bury something in this mud, and that mud sucks it down. And I think the pull, I think that would be a pretty good anchor. So, like I said, the plan would be that you would put them in, you deploy them so that you can see when a boat comes up to them. If you put them around the other side of the bend, the boat can come up to him, and he has time to negotiate, and he's undercover so that he can negotiate through or over the obstacles. But the point is to slow down a boat or stop him so that you can then take him under fire. Same thing going this way. Now, I understand that most, if not all, of my 5 faithful subscribers do not have this security issue. But I do, and I have to deal with it. So that probably means this doesn't pertain to anybody and won't be a very interesting topic for you, because it doesn't give you any ideas or any answers to your security issues. And I apologize for that. But it is a security problem I need to deal with, because while this bayou is a barrier for the Mongol hordes wanting to come across this way, at the same time, it's a road, as I said, and I have to be ready to defend it. Okay, thanks for watching and listening. Stay safe.
Hey folks, Matt Eaton here, Scholar Gladiator. So continuing our talk about axes, I'm going to again try and keep this brief, but I'm going to give you one other really important use and one advantage of using axes as opposed to using swords, and I'm wearing a sword as well, which I'll talk about in a second. And that is against shields. Okay, so one of the obvious things is an axe is very much more effective at destroying or compromising shields. So if we're talking about actually breaking the shields or penetrating the shields, then clearly axes or their rear spikes, and this also goes to things like picks and warhammers, are going to be more effective at doing that. But there are two other ways where the axe is more effective against people using shields than a sword would be. Okay, so first of all, I'll put the axe down for a second, okay, and go to the sword, which is from Landsknecht Emporium. I always have problems with that word, as you know. So swords were used with shields, obviously predominantly, more than axes we could say, for most periods of history, and certainly in medieval Europe swords were more common than axes most of the time, but some people chose axes even when they had swords available to them, and certainly in medieval art sometimes they're shown using an axe and wearing a sword. So why would that be? Well, the sword clearly can be used in a number of ways with a shield, and was done very regularly, and you'll notice of course that the sword is easy to wear, so it's a sidearm, it's a backup weapon to your primary weapon, which would often be a lance if you're a horseman, or on foot a spear. But even if it's a primary weapon for some reason, the sword can be used, and of course was used throughout the centuries, with a shield very effectively. But when we're coming around an opponent's shield, we're dealing with angles which can only be made by your arm and the articulations available to you. The sword itself, unless it's a curved blade, is essentially a straight line. Okay, so the sword being a straight line, to come around the shield, you can only get the angles around the shield that you're able to make with your own body. Now, admittedly, the angles that you can achieve with a sword around someone else's shield are possibly more diverse and varied than you might have thought of before. And if I just hold the shield out of the way for a second, the sword can come round in a variety of angles all the way around here, and that's just around the upper targets and around the other person's shield. It can of course also come around underneath the shield to the person's legs with cuts and thrusts from these similar angles around here. So basically you've got a huge variety of angles where your sword can come over or around the person's shield, and often I think people just think about, you know, giving blows, bam, 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 and moving the cuts around. But actually the thrusts and the cuts, and if we bring back edge cuts into this as well, can really come around the shield in a number of quite funky and interesting angles. But that being said, as I say, these angles are dictated by the articulations available to you in your hand and arm. The sword itself, or the weapon itself, is a straight line, essentially. Okay. Now, if we put the sword away for a second, if we come back to the axe, now the big disadvantage of this axe, anyway, is it doesn't have a top thrusting spike. So a lot of those thrusting angles are now denied to you, okay, unless you have a point on your axe. However, if we're talking about giving blows, the axe itself now projects beyond the edges of the person's defence, of the person's shield, which means that if you swung at their head, for example, if they're blocking a blow from a sword, they could do that, or that, or that, whatever angle they want to put the shield up, either further away from the body or closer to the body. But if this axe is coming in, it now comes further over the person's defence, so they need to move their defence wider, and bearing in mind that this hits with more momentum as well. So it might be a slower and less nimble weapon than the sword, but it hits with more power, and it can overlap the edge of the shield, of the defence. Okay, so defending with the shield becomes a little bit harder, a little bit more dangerous, and you need to move the shield a little bit wider to deal with this particular weapon. Obviously you don't want that, you don't want to put a shield up and still clock a load of that spike in your eye or face, okay? That's bad news. But then additionally to that, we come to the second point, and that is the fact that this projects over the edge, and therefore if you don't hit the person with a swing, you can then bind onto their shield and pull their shield with that hook essentially as well. It doesn't matter which side it's with. And this could be a hammer projection instead of a spike. The fact is that you've essentially got like a big capital letter T, and that forms a bit like a grappling hook or an anchor to grab onto bits of the shield and manipulate it. Okay. As I say, one disadvantage with this is it doesn't have a top thrusting spike, so you have lost those attacks, but certainly in terms of giving blows and hooking, it is a very fearsome weapon, and as I say as well, in terms of compromising the shield. And this is without going into the other big advantage of the axe, and that is that you can literally just hit people wearing armour and still have an effect on them through the armour. You can't do that so much with swords because swords just don't hit as powerfully as these. Anyway, I hope that's something interesting to mull over, and suggestions for any other related videos are very welcome below. Give us a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another video on Scholar Gladiatoria channel. Cheers folks! Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos.
Thanks for watching. Yeah.
Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about homeschooling and some of the crises that we're facing in our school system throughout this country. The schools are being closed down. I think they're overreacting. There's a bit of hysteria going on. That they're closing down, the kids are at home, and who knows how long this will be. And colleges have closed down. I have a grandson that can't graduate because of the suspension of the classes and the graduation ceremony. So I think it's very serious. Of course, I take the position that I don't think the coronavirus is nearly as serious as some of the complications. But with me today is Daniel McAdams, who of course you know because he's our co-host. He's also somebody that's had some personal experience with homeschooling. And he's not worried about his school closing down. He has a couple kids and they're getting homeschooled. And that's what we want to talk about. Of course, I've been involved in homeschooling for a while. And we want to visit with you shortly. Daniel.
Yeah, you know what I'm seeing, Dr. Paul? People are worried. I'm seeing on Facebook and other social media. Parents are feeling anxiety because their kids are home and they've sent their kids off to school and not really thought about lesson plans and education. Now they're finding their kids are home, they're probably watching a lot of cartoons or whatever, they do video games. Parents are getting tired of it. They do understand that their kids need to start studying, but they really don't know how to go about it. And that's why we kind of had the idea that maybe there's something that we can do to help take some of the anxiety out of having your kids home.
Yeah, and the program is something that I really believe in because I want to do this long term because I've never been very happy with our government school system. But really, there's a lot of other people that aren't very happy with the government system too because they would agree with us in many ways that this might be overkill as far as closing down everything because of the argument of how serious the coronavirus, which is still up for discussion. But anyway, the people are frightened about what to do, and I started the program, the homeschooling program, shortly after the Connors and Tom Woods and Greg Arthur are very instrumental in this. They have a good program, so I'm very pleased with that, and we have a significant number of people that think under these circumstances there might be some other people that think that homeschooling is the way to at least consider and learn about it, and that's what I wanted to visit with you on because there's so many disadvantages of what we're going through now. Of course, the disadvantage is that your kids being homeschooled a long time before you had to have the coronavirus involved, and you were, I think, interested more academically of what was happening and getting a good education for your kids. So this is something that's not going to get better fast. I thought it should have never occurred to this extent because the coronavirus has not proven to be anything compared to influenza, as far as the danger goes. But, this program is unique. It's a little bit different. There's a lot of videos to watch. It's something that students can operate on their own. They don't need a whole lot of supervision from the parents. And it's been very popular, for the
Ron-Paul curriculum. But the thing that we have used it, we do use it, and one of the things that's two of the great things about it, first of all, it's scalable. It's not all in or all out. You know, for our son,
You making
for example,
glue?
we use it as a supplement.
Is that what
to
you're doing,
other
Scar?
educational courses at
You
college.
making
He
glue?
did some courses with his mother, and he did some Ron-Paul curriculum courses. So it's very scalable. It's one very good thing about it. And the second thing is, especially when the kids get a little older, not even that much older, it's 98% self-taught. So the parents, my wife was busy teaching our younger two, she didn't have to worry about lesson plans and all of this with our son because it's self-taught. And kids are so used to
Oh.
YouTube videos these days that it's
You
very
don't have to
easy
eat
for
the
them
whole
to get
thing.
into. And I tell you
You
what,
just take a
our son
portion
was
if you
very
want.
reluctant
It's
to start
okay.
writing. As soon as he started
Oh,
studying Gary
no.
North and Tom Woods, two great masters, really,
Oh,
great
my
educators,
cigar.
he was writing, he was off the rails, writing constantly. So it does help students a lot, and that's why we really wanted to visit with the audience and tell them this might be something you want to look into, and who knows, you might want to do it permanently.
That's right. You know, a few months ago, I guess it is now, that I did a couple interviews of very excellent students. I was very pleased with them because I don't deal with the students on a day-to-day basis. And I did a couple interviews. I want to make them available so after we finish it, they can come and see these interviews that we've done. And I'll tell you what, they were really good. You know, one of the concerns I had, or two, about homeschooling before I knew about it, was one, socially they'll never adjust. I found out as I was on the campaign trail, it was the homeschooling kids that were very well adjusted and could stand up and ask questions like adults. And the other thing that our family was very much into sports. I mean, oh, you're homeschooling, they'll never meet other kids, they won't do anything athletic thing. Your kids actually get out and do athletic things, and there's a cooperation. So it's a different image than I ever had. First time I came across homeschooling was in the 80s, trying to close it down, and I still fear that too. And that's the program that I wanted was one that was designed not for a religious, narrow message, but a message of liberty where everybody could have a homeschooling group if they want, so they don't understand the freedom policy, the economic policy, the Federal Reserve, the foreign policy, and so it's very generalized in that sense, but narrow. That doesn't rule out that we don't think people should want to have a homeschooling that teaches in a much more narrow sense. That's the way schools originally started in our early history. They had a group of religious connotation to it, and there were small groups and one-room schoolhouses, and it was quite a bit different. So I do hope as we finish that people will click on and especially watch some of these interviews. I think that the program that you mentioned, that there's quite a few lessons that you can take if you're interested in want to see what the lessons are like, and maybe someone suggests you programs.
Yeah, you know, you can mention one really interesting thing is that there's nothing stopping you from forming a homeschool co-op using the Ron-Paul curriculum, and having more people that do that, so you can join them with other kids. So we would just, you know, encourage people, just click on ronpaulcurriculum.com, have a look at what's offered, look at how much they have on sample to try out, and as Dr. Paul mentioned, there's a very special program, rpcstudyskills.com, and we'll have links in the description to these and to the two videos Dr. Paul said. rpcstudyskills.com is a series of 40-some lessons that help teach your kids how to study and how to read, and it's completely free. So what do you have to lose? Give it a try, right?
Right. Well, very good. I mean, it's nice visiting with you because you've had experience with it too. I happen to tell you that when homeschooling really didn't exist, when I was raising our kids, you know, I strongly believe in something that is very long lasting. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today for this special review of homeschooling and the conditions that we're facing today in our educational system. Please come back soon.
Hey guys, it's Sunday, 11:47 a.m. on March 22nd, 2020, and I am pretty outraged about something that became very clear to me this morning. And I want to share my outrage with you because I think that this is such an indictment against both our country and against the body of Christ right now that I'm very frustrated. So let me explain this to you. I have a handful of family members in different parts of the country right now that are involved in different kinds of organizations of Christian worship, various people in the body of Christ. For example, my youngest son is a member at a very old school church up in Michigan, and he, for the last 2 weekends, has been setting up their live streaming so they could handle their services online. And then the government put this hold on the church, and the church has decided to bow to the golden calf of government right now, and they're not gathering. Now, that works out okay for the people up in Michigan that my son is part of the body of Christ there, because a lot of them are older. And I'm going to show you here this body of believers that I happen to be part of. There's only like 6 people that even go to this church, and they're all over 65, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 of us younger people. And there are precious elderly members of the church. There are widows. They are frail people. And I understand why my beloved Pastor Roy and Francine would decide not to have the gathering together. But you guys, here's the thing. Okay, so I will give as much grace as I can. In fact, I will charge my son to work his overtime to get that little church's streaming abilities online, because it makes sense that we are supposed to take care of our widows and our elderly people like that in the body of Christ. But I'm not going to give a pass. I'm absolutely not going to give a pass to any of the younger people, to any of the younger congregations, to any of these pastors that are 50 and under, who are sitting there cowering like pathetic false priests. Because I'm outraged, and here's why I have a picture of cubicles up, guys. It occurred to me this morning what the heck is going on here, and this makes me very, very angry. Okay, but there are churches all over it's this part of Arizona where I'm in, and I have family members that are members of these churches down here. Now, I know for sure that the average age of those churches is closer to 40 than it is to 70, like the ones I was just talking about. And those guys have no excuse. Those guys have no excuse to close their doors. Now, if people don't want to come, that's fine. But I was listening to a live stream of the church, another church that another family member of mine is part of. And the first thing that pastor said was, we are going to honor the president's request. Wow. Honor the government's request to close the church? Honor it? Wait a minute. When did self-determination and the ability of the adults, like my mom's late 70s, if she wants to stay home, fine. They have live streaming abilities. But what about the younger people in the church? So you're going to close the doors of the building right now? I'm sorry, guys. It doesn't work that way. No. Now, the reason I'm so mad is because the pictures of these cubicles here, those very same family members of mine down here that go to those churches that have a median age of, say, 40 years old, they also work for a very large bank in Arizona. And guess what? They're all going to work. Yep. They're all going to work because they're more busy now than they ever have been ever in the world. And guess what? Because everybody's home and everybody wants to check their bank balances and find out what's going on with their financial institutions. Guess who does not get to enjoy the concern about COVID-19? All the people who work at the banks. And believe me, guys, when they have call centers, they are packed in like little lemmings. And none of them are getting time off. None of them. They are packed in these little cubicles, and one sneeze, it's a petri dish. It's a petri dish. And do you know what this shows us, you guys? This shows us the priest class. The important priest class of this country is the banks. It's not about safety from this illness. There's a different agenda here. And the fact that the Christians are falling for this makes me outraged. Look, you guys, if you're a believer in Jesus and you're afraid to go out of your house because you don't want to die, then you're not a believer in Jesus. I'm sorry, guys, but the very good news that we have as believers in Jesus is you don't need to fear death. I think it says that in a couple of places in the New Testament, and I'm a little furious at the people that can't put this together. These pastors out there that are like, oh, we're going to honor our president's request to close churches. No, you don't. No. The last door that should have closed was the church. The fact that the banks are still open and my siblings have to work in a cubicle like this is outrageous. I'm so mad about this, you guys, as you can obviously tell. So I want to take us to a couple of scriptures here that will show the hypocrisy of this supposed body of believers. What the heck do you guys believe? You know what it is? You guys have turned into a country club. That's what the body of Christ is right now. It's a country club. Because if you guys actually believed, in the eternal life of the kingdom that you're supposed to be gathering in the name of to honor our Lord Jesus Christ, none of you guys would be afraid of death. No. Let's take a look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, when Nebuchadnezzar said, okay, everybody has to bow whenever they hear the sound of the psaltery with symphony. They have to bow to worship the golden idol. What did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say? They're like, sorry, Nebuchadnezzar, king, live forever. The God who delivered us, he says here, this is what I'm going to read you this part. It says, now, if you're ready, at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, psaltery, and symphony with all kinds of music, you will fall down and worship the image which I have made for you. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you from my hands? You guys, let's think about this for a second. We're being told that there is this crazy petri dish that's going to kill us. Crazy petri dish that's going to kill us if we gather together in groups. Really? We're more afraid of an illness. Doesn't God have power over plague, guys? I'm sorry. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had really good reasons to stay out of a fire. But see, that's what we do as Christians. We go into the fire. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, or president, or king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Sorry, guys, that's the response that the Christians should have had to the president's request that we not gather. This is ridiculous, and I'm outraged. There are so few Christians out there right now. If those churches are closed, you guys, I'm sorry. Now, the fact that we do have elderly people, like, I'm not upset at all that Pastor Roy, these guys are all over 60 that we're honoring the president, because so many Christians are conservatives and they think that they should need to.
Hey guys, how's it going? All good? And a quick update for you guys. The other day I came back from the flight. I was a little bit feverish. It's 5 o'clock. I felt my sinus blocked. Went to the doctor. They sent me straight away to the packed up and ready to go, and so I don't know when I'll be back. So I don't want the room to not be used. So I've stashed a lot of my stuff, and I'll stash some more. But as I go over my gear, one of the things that really helps or hurts on my trip, as I try to document things for you, is these power packs. Not only do I have to charge my cameras,
Hi, I'm Susan Wheaton, and I'm here to talk to you about coronaviruses and especially COVID-19. Why am I out of the sun? My daughter, the videographer, said, get out of the sun. That's very bad lighting. But the reason I'm out of the sun is because I want you to be out of the sun. I want you to turn your face into the sun. I want you to get your arms from your hands all the way up to your elbows exposed to the sun. It's noon right now. It's bright out, and it just has been equinox. And what that means is exposing your face and your arms at least up to your elbows for 15 minutes between 11 and 1 will net you about 20 pounds of international units of vitamin D. Nothing could be better for your immune system. We know that one of the reasons for the flu pandemic in 1918 was that the entire population was deficient in vitamin D. This is partly because so many people had moved from the country into the cities. They were working inside from dawn to dusk. Nowadays, they're getting nutrition and vitamin D because they're putting on sunscreen all of the time. So get yourself outside and get some of that really, really good vitamin D going for you. I'll be right back with lots of other tips and tips for making sure that when you get COVID-19, you have a smile to face.
Thought you were done. What you gonna do now? Lick your paws? You gonna lick all that glue off your paws? You can't get it up on top of your nose, can you? How did you get it on top of your nose? Did you push it around? Is that what you did? No, you don't even know what your name is. Hon, Bud, Sweetheart, Tawny, Scarf. Ooh! We're off to go rescue the next corona person. Alright. Hey, yo. I mean, seriously. The flash means you're on video, dude. Oh yeah, and dude. It's your other name, huh? Oh, yes. Okay. Well. Dude, good job there, bud. Good job.